Hey guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today with another Pro Tips episode, this time with Coltonw83. He is the #2 finisher in Kings Cup live in LA. I got a chance to meet him. I've also watched his streams, and let me tell you, he's a great player. Really excited about this interview. So guys, enough of me blabbing. Let's go ahead and bring in Colton. Enjoy the tips, guys. Alright guys, so I am here with none other than Coltonw83. Colton, such a pleasure to have you on, man. How are you doing?
Good.
Well, I met you at Kings Cup in LA, and you came in second place, and you did very, very well. And then I started tuning into your streams on Twitch, and I noticed right away that you just play the game at almost another level than others, and it really comes down to, at least from outside looking in, your ability to have that predictive play and to know what's coming from your opponent and to even counter it before they drop their troops. So I definitely want to focus on that in today's interview, more so than focusing on specific decks, although we will cover the decks that you're running right now, but I really want to get to those. So that's going to be in a little bit, but first, let's kind of start out with some general questions. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long have you been playing, and when did you realize that you were a good player?
So I started playing about a month after global release, and I joined a clan that no longer exists, but at first I just played for fun, and my clan actually got into RPL, which is a league play system that is still currently running for Clash Royale, obviously. And at first, I wouldn't say I lost my very first 2 matches that I played in the league, and they were just absolutely awful. And I actually remember writing I wrote almost an essay of all the mistakes I made in my matches, and I submitted it to the clan leader.
Oh my
god! He was
God.
actually, yeah, I remember that just now, yeah. And he was actually very impressed. And after that, I just worked on my gameplay, played friendlies with my clanmates, watched replays of good players, and yeah, from there on, I improved my gameplay, and I became one of the best players in that season, and we ended up winning. And now I'm playing RPL and CRL and Mortar Combat.
So cool, man. It's really comforting, I think, to the rest of us out there, the rest of us average, normal players, to know that, you know, you weren't always an absolute beast. It's not like you just picked this game up and, you know, with your eyes closed can start beating anybody. So do you have any, like, maybe some general tips just to how to take your game to the next level? You might be, you know, just starting out in the game, or you might already be in a high-level clan, but, you know, you just kind of hit that brick ceiling somewhere where you just can't move up in cups, or you just can't, maybe someone like me, like in a 1,000-person tournament, you know, I can pretty consistently place top 50, but I very rarely hit top 10. In fact, I think I've only done it once. So any kind of just general tips? Like, what do you think the best way to improve your game is?
So for ladder, I'd say be aware that your card levels do limit you. Like, I can't be at the very top of the leaderboard because I don't have max cards, and that's okay. I think just focus on, like, doing the best in friendly battles, and I mean, if this is your focus anyway, do your best in, like, friendly battles, and watch, like, the top players in tournaments and kind of pick up on their play styles and some of the stuff they do to counter certain cards. And yeah, so that's how I improve, is watching friendly battles and watching other good players and picking up on their play styles and incorporating it into mine.
Okay, how long do you generally stick with the deck? I know that's a popular question. Like, some people switch it up all the time, or some people kind of stick with one deck archetype and try to, like, tweak it within there. Like, what about you? How long do you stick with the same deck?
I like kind of limiting myself to, like, maybe a max of 4 decks and just getting really, really good at them, learning the in and outs against every single matchup, and just getting a bunch of matches in against a bunch of matchups. And sometimes ladder does that efficiently, or grand challenges, but I also will get my teammates to run certain deck types that they're good against me, and then learn how to play against it.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a good idea, too, kind of requesting certain types of, or, you know, if you have a clanmate who you know is a really good, you know, control player or whatever, try to play against that, and then you kind of train yourself that way. I like that. So what about maybe some general tips for players who are totally free to play, and maybe they're kind of in like mid-level arenas, maybe they have like one legendary card or no legendary cards. Is there any tip that you have for people in, say, arenas 6, 7, and 8, try to make that leap to get to legendary arena?
So I will have some people ask me like, oh, what deck is the best for getting to 3,000, or what deck is the best in this arena? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say there's any particular deck. Obviously, you want to use cards that you have leveled up somewhat. There's no particular deck that will get you any magical number, but learning a certain playstyle or learning a certain deck, and then if you don't have legendaries, just sub out the cards. Maybe pick a deck that only has like the log in it, and then replace it with Zap, so that's not too big a change. Mm-hmm. And then just learn that deck like the back of your hand. And also, if you are limited by card levels, don't worry about trophies too much. It's not like the end-all be-all. But yeah, work towards getting tourney standard, and then just learn that play style.
What is your favorite game mode, Colton?
I would say probably grand challenges, and then also the tourneys, the in-game tourneys. Even if they don't give as good a reward as they used to, they're still pretty good for competition.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on my top 2 there. I mean, it's so nice to farm grand challenges, but I do wish that the tournament rewards were a little bit bigger again, because it just makes them... Tournaments should be amazing, but the rewards, I feel like they're a little bit off. But hopefully we'll see some changes maybe. But how do you handle raging, tilting, frustration anytime you go on like a losing streak? I know a lot of people have probably broken their phones out there or their devices. You seem like a pretty calm, cool, collected guy. How do you deal with losing streaks?
So I've never really yelled or tossed my phone or anything, but I do get tilted.
Yeah.
If I start losing, and I get upset sometimes, like especially if I'm playing ladder and I just run into level 13 over and over again.
Yeah.
That definitely gets me a little bit off. But I'd say sometimes it's good just to walk away for a while, mm-hmm. and then other times, I don't know, just play to have fun, and then maybe go into friendly battles and just play not necessarily to win. Like if you're playing ladder and you drop a bunch of trophies, like I said, don't really worry about a number. Just play to improve, and then maybe like go back and watch your replays instead of rushing matches, and then like identify your mistakes, and don't pinpoint on like levels. Don't make excuses, mm-hmm. because even I'll do this in high level play. I'll make excuses like starting hands, and it's something you can't avoid. Like sometimes you get bad ones. Good players learn to adapt, and that's what you just have to do.
Okay, that's actually good advice, watching your own replays. Is there anything particularly you look for? I mean, sometimes it makes sound like really obvious, like when they take down your tower, but is there something specifically that you're looking at? Like, are you looking at your opponent's cards and kind of how much elixir they had at certain times and where you could have defended, where you went on offense or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's obvious mistakes like, oh, I placed that card, the defense a little bit too far or whatever. But there's also stuff like your overall play style, when you should have attacked and when you shouldn't have, which card you used to counter, which one you didn't. And you can go back and kind of identify those and then kind of tweak your gameplay based off of that rather than like blindly rushing in. Yeah, because every card you drop, there should be like an intention. And you should know what you're doing that for. And yeah, also like going back and getting a feel for their elixir, watching replays and watching your opponent play. It helps you identify what they're going to do during a match as you see their cards in real time before you know their deck.
Yeah, that's great advice. What's your favorite deck right now, or do you have a few?
I'd say my favorite decks right now are Siege for the most part, but I also have like Golem Graveyard is one deck I run a lot, and then my other favorite deck right now is a Barb Hut, Three Musketeer, and Hog deck that does a lot of split damage. And is good against the lightning meta.
Yeah, I totally want to zero in on 2 of those decks. One is the Golem deck, the Golem Graveyard, and I'm going to go ahead and flash both of those on the screen right now so you guys can see Colton's favorite card combos here. But the Golem Graveyard deck, first of all, let me ask you, is there any good substitute for the Graveyard? Obviously, it's the win condition, so it's kind of difficult, but is there another variation that you can maybe recommend if people don't have the Graveyard in this deck? Or
the other variation would be the Meta Golem deck that has lightning in it. You run, instead of Graveyard, you go, and instead of Zap, you go Graveyard. I think I run Fireball instead of Zap now, but you go Graveyard, or not Graveyard, you go Baby Dragon, Lightning, and there's one other card, but it's the deck Yao Yao ran in a bunch of his matches.
Yeah, well, let me quickly diverge then and ask you about Yao Yao, because he was the guy that you went up against. This is the guy that took me out. He's the guy that took Chief Pat out. He's the guy that ultimately took you out. You came in second place, so you got farther than anybody else. What do you think makes him so good?
The fact that he learns one deck archetype, being like beatdown. He ran two golem decks and one lava hound. He learns them really, really well, and he knows when to pressure and when not to attack, when to defend. Against me, I'd say he was really good at taking some damage and giving up on pushes at times, and then resetting and using the elixir advantage to just constantly pressure and not allow me to attack myself.
So is there any general tips, like kind of just, to piggyback on that point, is there any good tips for somebody who doesn't really know when to reset their push and when to when to drop those last two archers onto the back of a push? Like, do you have any general rules? Maybe like early on in a match, you kind of play things safe and then get more aggressive later, or how do you play that?
So in regards to beatdown, absolutely you do want to play safe early. You only want to push with like your main tank when their win condition is down or when they're low on elixir because they just attacked. But other than that, if you're against a beatdown player and you're playing especially like a control deck or maybe like a giant or a hog, you want to always immediately pressure the opposite lane and keep up pressure. You never want to let them build up a push and attack the opposite lane. And if they switch, what golem players do is they switch their lower tower and they'll try to bait you into only fighting in that lane. And unless you're running something like a miner that can get behind the push, you shouldn't go into a golem. You should switch and start damaging the other tower because you want to stay away from the golem. You don't want to play into their hands.
Okay, what about a mirror match? So like a golem versus golem deck. If your opponent drops a golem behind their tower and you're sitting at like 7 elixir and you have your golem ready, are you playing your golem or what are you doing there?
At 7 elixir, I would say that means you're probably at an elixir disadvantage, and I don't think it would be a good idea because you wouldn't be able to support it, and all they're going to do is they're going to throw down a tombstone, and that tombstone's going to destroy the golem by itself.
Yeah.
The thing about a golem is, so in that situation, I would maybe, put down like archers or an ice golem at the back, and then once their golem is like in front of their tower, I put down tombstones so skeletons start building up on it, and then you just have to really try to defend. Okay. This is like if you're in a golem deck. Or alternatively, you could kind of play your own golem a little bit farther and then actually have no intentions whatsoever of attacking and just stack up defensive troops so that they'll kill your golem and you kind of reset the board.
Okay, so wait, obviously, assuming you're sitting at 7 elixir, wait till you get to 10 elixir, drop your golem, and then just start stacking all your defending troops using the golem as like a defensive meat shield.
Mm-hmm. And like for my instance, I would have tombstone, so I wouldn't even use it. I would just try to defend his golem and try to reset.
Okay, interesting. A tombstone is so popular in the game right now. Are you so obviously this is somewhat deck dependent, but will you like fireball and get negative value against it? Well, not negative because you'll probably hit a tower as well, but will you fireball a tombstone?
I wouldn't do it early on because they could be running a spell bait deck, and that would be a bad idea if you use one of your 2 spells to kill a tombstone. Yeah. But later in the game, when you know what they're running, and if there's you don't need if they don't have 3 muskets and you don't need fireball, then it's not a bad idea because you're essentially fireballing a tower for 1 elixir, so that's not bad at all.
Yeah. Same thing with a princess, I assume, late in game.
Yeah, you can fireball princesses as well. Usually, I think a lot more now people start playing them at the bridge, so I wouldn't fireball a princess at the bridge. I would use like archers or Mega Minion, but yeah.
Yeah. So what about, let's move on to the second deck, because this is the deck that I really, really love. This is the deck that I've been playing ever since I saw you playing it. And, I mean, one of the reasons I love it is because the Barbarian Hut, which used to be almost non-existent in the meta, is quickly becoming one of the best hard counters to the Golem deck, the beatdown decks. So can you just give a few tips on this deck, maybe like a general overview? Obviously, it's great anti-lightning deck, so can you maybe tell us why?
So the main thing that makes it anti-lightning is the Barb Hut. So generally people say, oh, you have 3 musket, you must be really mad when people are running lightning, which traditionally that's true. Now when you have the Barbarian Hut and the Barbarians that both have more HP than the 3 muskets and the Ice Golem as well, you can drop those things, and if they're already up and say your opponent has like a big push coming, you can drop 3 muskets right next to them and they'll try to lightning it, and they'll actually hit the barbs and the Barb Hut instead, and your 3 muskets will live unscathed. And they can pretty much destroy the push, and then you can counter push.
That's so awesome when that happens, man. I love that. I love like when the lightning hits like the, whether it's the Ice Golem or the Barbarians or the Barbarian Hut. And even the Barbarian Hut, it's been so long since it's been in any sort of a meta that people forget how many hit points it has. So even a Lightning against a Barb Hut, it's not the end of the world, It's not going to take it down. So I really like that deck. One question I did have for you about it, because when I'm playing the deck, I'm actually doing really well with the deck. It's my favorite deck in the meta right now. But one thing I kind of, question is, assuming my opponent doesn't have direct damage in their current rotation, would you, let's say you're at 10 elixir or close to, and you're sitting with both the Barbarian Hut and the Three Musketeers, which one are you going to play? Are you going to just always play the Barbarian Hut first and then kind of wait on the Three Musk, or?
I would say generally I would, but say you watch they just fireballed something else in your deck, maybe a Mega Minion or the Archers, and that they don't have any other spells. This is assuming the game's been going on for a little while and you know what they have. It's if they ever use their direct damage, their spells that are meant to kill through musket, then you can always just hardcore push one lane with them. Because usually I'd split them at the back, but if they had actually already used their spell, then you can hard push with them.
Okay, yeah, so just play them right on the river and hope for the best?
I would say play them slightly behind the river and put an Ice Golem in front of them.
Okay, cool. When do you play the Three Musketeers behind your King Tower versus in the middle of in front of the King Tower, I should say?
I'd say I only play them in front when I'm in a defensive situation. Like in the Barb Hut's up, like I said, in the Lightning situation, that's when you could play them right next to the Barb Hut, or you play them at the river when they've already used a Fireball or a Lightning. You generally play them at the back when the game's kind of slow, but usually only in double elixir because you don't want to use them too much early, unless you have to, and that's the only thing you can play in your hand. But yeah, you should always split them unless you know. And how you do that is you just play them at the back behind the King Tower. But you should always split them. Oh, and you should always split the two on the opposite side as the Barb Hut or on the opposite side of your most damaged tower, because you don't want the spells to hit both your Barb Hut or the weak tower.
Yeah, definitely great advice there. Can't take that's a lot of value on that direct damage spell if they take out your weak tower and two of your musks. I'd like to get into the questions about predictive play a little bit, because again, that's kind of what I wanted to make this about, but there's so many questions I have for you, so I feel like I could talk for hours. But moving on here, so you are so good watching your stream. Not only are you so good at predicting what your opponent's going to do, but you're also really, really good at commentating at the same time as you play. I'm really jealous of your skills there. Props to you for that. People should check you out. I'll be sure to obviously link your Twitch info in the description below. Do you stream every night? I know it's super late for me. That's the one gripe I have with you, Colton. It's like midnight and I'm getting your notification on the East Coast. But are you streaming every night, and do you have a schedule?
Yes, so I'll actually be streaming earlier, so I think it would start at 8 and go to 10 or 11 your time.
Oh, nice.
But it's 5. It'll probably be 5 to 7 Pacific, and I'll be for sure streaming on Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, I think. The weekends maybe vary a little bit, and honestly, I may, if I don't have too much homework, I may stream on Monday and Wednesdays for sure. But 4 days a week, I think I'll be guaranteed to stream from 5 to 9-ish Pacific time, yeah, around there.
Awesome. Well, people, you should definitely tune in. This is not the end of the interview. It sounds like we're closing here, but you should definitely tune in to Colton, because he's one of the best. I predict he'll be one of the top streamers in the game before long, because it's just such high-quality content. So if you care about high quality, check it out. But moving on. How early in a match do you start predicting in terms of the opponent's cycle? And more importantly, how early are you going to play a preemptive, let's say, fireball or something on your push? So kind of maybe that's a little confusing to people who are just, tuning in. But what I'm talking about is, say you're going to send in a Hog Rider. I noticed that you're a big fan of just preemptively, not all the time, but sometimes preemptively dropping in arrows or a fireball or whatever you think's going to counter or a log, whatever you think's going to counter what they're going to counter you with. So when do you start your mind games? And tell us a little bit about, your whole philosophy of that mental aspects of countering and preemptive plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after you've kind of got a feel for what they defend with, especially in this meta, people will defend with Tombstone. And if you're using Hog, it's very easy to tell, after they've defended twice the Tombstone in the exact same location.
Yeah.
That so I'll play the Hog, and then I'll time it to where right as the hog gets his first hit off, the tombstone will hit the tower. I mean, hit the tombstone. The log will hit the tombstone, and then it'll kill the skeletons that spawned at the same time. But I played this before they actually played the tombstone, and right before my hog will hit it, because I just kind of have the timing down. But you can kind of people will play in the same spot because there's like an ideal spot. Yeah. So you can get used to it, and then that'll allow the hog to quickly retarget on the tower without taking much damage.
So how early do you start doing that? I mean, one thing that I'll just cop out, because it's something that I definitely need to work on. It's definitely one of the weaker points of my entire game is sometimes I'll be like literally halfway through a match regulation, and I'll like kind of space out like what my opponent's win condition even is. You know, like I'm too caught up in my own game and that's obviously such a noob beginner mistake. But sometimes you just zone out. So like, are you so keenly aware from the very, very beginning? Like, obviously I know what they're playing, but you know what I'm saying? Like, what their best counter to you is and stuff like that. Like, is that one of the main things in the front of your brain going into a match?
It's definitely when I'm playing my absolute best, like at Kings Cup, what I'm doing is I'm pushing anything else outside of my mind, and that's why people are like, "Wow, you look so serious when you're playing."
Yeah.
And I'm just, the only thing that I'm thinking about is what do I need to do to win, and what is my opponent doing trying to stop me, and what is he doing to try to win. So you should take note of every single card he plays, and his rotation, and like when things are up. And as far as like knowing when people have defenses to defend, you should always realize that to get a card that they have just played, they have to play 4 other cards first before it rotates back into their hand. So something hog decks will do is they'll play a bunch of cards in defense, like low-cost cards, like cycle decks, so they can out-cycle the defense because you can get your cards, your hog back before they can their defense. So that's, yeah.
No, and I think that you're really, you almost have like a sixth sense of knowing your opponent's rotation. Like, rarely when I watch your stream do you so often I should say, are you like, okay, well, their counter's not up and their rotation. Like, you just say that, second nature all the time. So is there something, I mean, are you counting 4 cards after every single, win condition play? Or is it just something that you can just tell they're playing a lot of cards to quickly, cycle back?
I'd say I definitely do make a note to like understand what they've been playing, and because after a little while you can kind of feel, oh, they're playing this card after like 30 seconds or whatever. Yeah. But it is kind of a feel, just something you get after playing for a while. But you should also make a mental note of like what their win condition is, and like for instance, my beatdown decks, you usually want to play a golem after they've done their main push, because then they're forced to defend and they can't attack anymore. And that's how golem decks win, is they build up really, really big pushes that can overwhelm any defense. So that's something I keep in mind when I'm playing Golem especially.
So what are your favorite counters in the current meta for, obviously for these predictive plays that we're talking about, but even beyond that? Like, are there certain staple cards that everybody should have in their deck, do you think?
The best defensive cards right now are generally Log, Tombstone, Archers, Mega Minion, and those are pretty much every one of my decks.
Yeah, they're really popular right now. All 3 of them, definitely love them all. If you so here's one: if you get caught in like a counter cycle where you're basically just trading blows with your opponent in the same lane, when will you switch lanes, if ever?
So if you're kind of in a cycle to where you're both doing the exact same thing and nothing's really happening, you need to identify who is winning that. So let's say they're marginally beating you out on damage, then that's when you need to switch it up. But if they keep on playing in the same cycle and you're slowly winning, just keep it up by all means. But especially if you're like a beatdown player, or if you're playing Golem, you want to play into them, because if they play in the same lane as you, they're going to lose because you're going to overwhelm them. But yeah, seriously.
No, that's definitely good advice. I want, like, the way I look at your gameplay is like you're like a grandmaster. You're kind of not only predicting what they're going to do next, but predicting what they're predicting that you're going to do next, if that makes sense. So is that in your mind, like, after you start doing your predictive plays and after you start really trying to react before they play their card, is there a certain point where you take it to even the next level where you're like, okay, now they think I'm gonna react this way, and I'll switch it up again?
Yeah, say they have been defending with Tombstone, and the second time they do it, I like get the Tombstone with the Log and get my hog in. they may switch up to like using like their Mega Minion or their archers instead. And in that case, I'll use my Fireball instead of my Log, especially late game too. It becomes more viable to use Fireball than it does Log because you're trying to get that final push and you're trying to overwhelm anything they use. So yeah, and that's what good players generally do. They'll switch their defense up. So yeah, I do keep it in mind.
Okay, great advice, man. Well, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Definitely so happy to have you come on. I learned so much by watching your streams and even by interviewing you today. So again, I encourage everybody to check you out. Any shout outs or anything like that before I let you go?
Yeah, so my clan is Mortal Kombat, and we have 3 family clans now. Feel free to join. Yeah, obviously, like we said, my stream, I'm getting that going, and it's still a work in progress, but I'm really enjoying it, and thanks to everyone who's already came into by the stream.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm sure some of these guys will check you out, and if they don't, they're missing out. So thanks so much, Colton. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, take care. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for the Colton interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Do you have a guest that you'd like to see on my channel? Let me know either on Facebook at Clash with Ash official fan page or on Twitter at Clash_with_Ash. Guys, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. I really appreciate it. And as always, take care, guys.